Good morning, class. Today, um, let's talk about quadratic equation. Since we already through with linear equations, so this time, uh, let's deal with equations that has a degree of 2 in its variable. So from the previous lesson kasi, we only have equation that contains only a single variable wherein its exponent is of 1 degree, but this time the exponent of our equation is now on a second degree. That's why it is called quadratic. So in this lesson, we are going to solve quadratic equations by using several methods. The first one is by factoring. So I think you already know the steps or the methods on how to factor polynomial equations, specifically quadratic in nature. And then the second method is by root property. And then the third one is by completing the squares. So medyo dito it's very long, the process is very long. And then the next one is by using a formula, the quadratic formula, the famous quadratic formula, which is also derived from the previous method, which is completing the squares. And then finally, let's have some real life applications that deals with quadratic equations involving Pythagorean theorem, so the famous Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so let's start by solving quadratic equations by factoring. So again, class, quadratic equation, this is an equation of this form. You have here the standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. This is the standard form of the quadratic equation. As you can see, we have a variable here x, and then it is arranged from the highest exponent up to the constant, and since it is equation, so we equate this as 0. And then as you've noticed, quadratic, this is quadratic because the exponent or the highest exponent is to the power of 2. So this is quadratic, and then a stands for the leading term, the leading coefficient of our leading term. B stands for the coefficient of the middle term, and C would be considered as our constant. So if we already have this form, then we can factor them easily by using those steps that we have discussed from the previous module. So we have factoring a perfect square trinomial, factoring the difference of two squares, etc. So let's have our first example on how to solve quadratic equation. But before that, why we need to use those methods in order to solve quadratic equations? Because in quadratic equation class, the same with linear equations, our goal is to solve for the value of our x. In linear equation class, it is very easy because let's say you're given a 2x plus 1 is equals to 5. Then you just transpose 1, what's left is 2x is equals to 5 minus 1, and then divide by 2. Therefore, the value of our x is equals to 5 minus 1 is 4, divided by 2 is 2. So in linear equation, it's very simple. But for a quadratic equation, since we have degree 2, so we expect that we have two values for our solution. So two values na siya. So this one cannot be easily combined because x squared and x cannot be combined. So therefore, this method or the method for linear equation cannot be applied in solving quadratic equation. That's why we need to factor out. We need to make this quadratic equation, or we need to convert this as a factor of some prime expressions. So let's say a factor of x plus a and x plus b, such that this factor would satisfy our equation here, the above equation. And then since we already have this, so take note that from the properties of algebra, if you have an expression a multiplied by b, which is equal to 0, it follows that a should be 0 or b should be 0. And since we already have, let's consider that a is equivalent to x plus a and b is equivalent to x minus b. Therefore, we can equate this x plus a to 0. Kasi diba, by this rule, it follows that a can it follows that a could be 0 or b could be 0 or both. So we can equate these two factors here, yung factors natin, we can equate them as x plus a is equals to 0 and yung isa is x plus b is equals to 0. Since their factors is of first degree, so therefore linear na ito, so we can easily solve for x here. You can just transpose a and then you have the value of our first x equals to negative a, and the second x, just transpose b on the other side. We now have a second value of negative b. So as what I have told you earlier, the solution, we have two solutions for our quadratic equation. So this is its principle. Now let's apply this in solving real quadratic equations. So ganito lang class, this is the principle behind quadratic equations. So let's solve quadratic equations. So let's have here an example. We have x squared minus x minus 6 is equal to 0. Of course, this one is the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, wherein our a here corresponds to the 1 here, and then our b here corresponds to the negative 1 in the middle term, and our constant c corresponds to the negative 6, which is the last term. Here, we need to factor out this. So we need to factor out this trinomial in order to have a factor that is of a linear expression, para magiging linear na siya, kasi we cannot solve this one directly. So this method is, I think this is the first method that you should use kasi mas easier ito, because this can be used if you observe or if you notice that our quadratic equation can be factored or factorable siya. If it is factorable, then you can proceed this method. So here, our quadratic expression is x squared minus x minus 6. So let's try factoring by trial and error. So again, i-apply mo yung knowledge natin sa factoring. So since our constant here is negative 6, so let's find a factor for negative 6. So for negative 6, you can have negative 3 and 2, or you can have negative 2 and 3, or you can have 6 and negative 1, or negative 6 and 1. And then remember that out of this combination, select one that when both are added, the answer would be the middle term. So negative 3 plus 2 equals negative 1. So this is negative 1. Here, negative 2 plus 3 is positive 1. 6 plus negative 1 is 5. Negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5. So therefore, this would be the right combination. So you can just plug in our factor here inside the parentheses. So we have x, then minus 3, and the other one is x plus 2. So therefore, this would be our factor for our quadratic expression, x plus 3 and x plus 2, sorry, that is x minus 3. So this is x minus 3. So x minus 3, which is equal to 0. Since we already know that from the property of algebra, a times b equals to 0, a should be 0 and also b be 0, or a is 0 or b is 0. So we equate this each factor to 0. So x minus 3 is equal to 0. And the other one is x plus 2 is equal to 0. So we have two solutions for our x. So the first one is we need to transpose this on the other side. So we now have x is equals to 3. So this is the first solution. The second solution is transpose on the other side. So we have x sub 2 is equals to negative 2. So therefore, our solution for x is the set of numbers of elements 3 and negative 2. So this would be our final answer. Now if you want to check this, so you can just plug it on our original equation. So let's try to verify whether both solutions satisfy our quadratic equation. So here we have x squared minus x minus 6 is equal to 0. So verify using x is equals to 3. So we have here 3 squared minus 3 minus 6 is equals to 0. So 3 squared is 9 minus 3 minus 6 is equals to 0. Follow PEMDAS rule. 9 minus 3 is equals to 6 minus 6 equals to 0. So therefore this 0 equals 0. Therefore our x equals to 3 satisfies our equation. Therefore 3 is a solution. How about the second one? How about x is equals to negative 2? So plug in our equation. So we have negative 2 squared minus 2 minus 6 is equal to 0. So negative 2 squared, this is a 4. Then I think this is minus negative 2. So negative times negative, positive. So plus 2 minus 6 is equals to 0. So 4 plus 2 is 6 minus 6 equals to 0. Therefore this 0 is equals to 0. So as you can see, or as you notice here, we also verified that negative 2 is a solution for our quadratic equation. Therefore both answers are solution of our quadratic equation. So let's try another example, class. So erase muna natin to. For our second example, we are given x squared. So x squared minus 81 is equal to 0. So here we can factor this one because 81 can be expressed as x squared minus 9 squared is equal to 0. And then I think this expression here, this quadratic expression, is of the form x squared minus y squared, wherein its factor would be x plus y and x minus y. So remember the difference of two squares. So we can express this as x plus 9 and x minus 9, which is equal to 0. Then equate each factor to 0 in order to solve for the two values of our x. So we have the first one is x plus 9 is equal to 0. The second one is x minus 9 is equal to 0. Then transpose this 9 on the other side. So we have the value for our first x is equal to negative 9. The value for our second x transposes on the other side. X sub 2 is equals to 9. So therefore the solution of our quadratic equation is a set of numbers negative 9 and 9. So we can verify this one easily. So the first one is negative 9. So we have here negative 9 squared minus 81 is equal to 0. Of course, negative can be positive. It will now be positive when multiplied by itself and still negative. So positive 81 minus 81 equals to 0. Of course, this is still the 0. Therefore, we verify the first value, which is negative 9. How about the second value? X sub 2 is equals to positive 9. So plug in 9 squared minus 81 equals 0. Of course, this is 81 minus 81 equals 0. Therefore, this is 0 equals to 0. So from verifying our solution, so we can say that the solution negative 9 and 9 satisfies our quadratic equation. Therefore, our answer is correct. So let's try another quadratic equation. So the third example is x cubed plus 2x squared minus 9x minus 18 is equals to 0. So in this case, class, you notice that this is not a quadratic anymore because the highest degree here is 3. So hindi na to siya, sir, ma-classify as quadratic equations. But if we factor this one, or we use factoring by grouping, then we notice some pattern that it would still follow a quadratic equation form. So how are we going to factor this by grouping? So let's group these first two terms and also the last two terms. So for the first two terms, we've noticed that there's a common factor for the two terms. The common factor is x squared. So we can factor out x squared. What's left is x plus 2. How about for the second term? Since 9 and 18 has a common factor of 9, so therefore we can factor out 9. So we have minus 9, then positive x dito, and then on the other side is plus 2 is equal to 0. So as you've noticed, class, we have a common factor for both terms, which is x minus 2, x plus 2 and x plus 2. Therefore, we can factor that expression out of the binomial term. So x plus 2, then what's left is x squared minus 9 is equal to 0. So as you can see here, x squared minus 9, this expression here is of the form x squared minus y squared, which can be factored as x plus y times x minus y. So therefore, we can use that. So we have here x plus 2 multiplied by x plus 3, then x minus 3. Kasi 9 is a perfect square of 3. So that is equal to 0. So here we have 3 factors. Therefore, we have 3 solutions. So sir, bakit we arrive 3 solutions? Because the number of solutions for a certain equation depends upon the degree of our equation. Since our degree here is to the power of 3, so therefore we expect that we have 3 solutions. If it is to the power of 2, for quadratic, we have 2 solutions. If it is to the power of 4, so 4 solutions, then to the power of 5, 5 solutions, and so on and so forth. So here, the first solution is x plus 2 is equal to 0. The second is x plus 3 is equal to 0. And the third one is x minus 3 is equal to 0. So here, transpose 2 on the other side. So we have the first solution is negative 2. Okay, so let's erase this para klaro. Para makita nyo talaga ng maigi. So here we have negative 2. The second solution is transpose the positive 3 to the other side. We have negative 3. And the third one is transpose negative 3 on the other side to make it positive 3. So therefore, the solution for our quadratic, or this is not a quadratic equation, but cubic equation is this. X is composed of elements of negative 2, negative 3, and positive 3. So let's verify, class, whether our solutions are correct. So for x equals to negative 2, so equals negative 2, plug in the values. So negative 2 cubed plus 2 times negative 2 squared minus 9 times negative 2 minus 18 equals 0. So here, negative 2 cubed is positive 8. Then, negative 8 pala. Then, negative 2 squared is positive 4 times 2 is plus 8. Then, negative 9 times negative 2 is positive 18. Minus 18 is equal to 0. So here, negative 8 plus 8 can be 0. And also 18 minus 18 is 0. So therefore 0 is equals to 0. So the first solution, which is negative 2, satisfies our equation. So this one is correct. How about for x is equals to negative 3? Plug in the values. So we have negative 3, or substitute it to our equation. Then plus 2 times negative 3 squared minus 9 times negative 3 minus 18 is equal to 0. So negative 3 cubed is negative 27. Then negative 3 squared is positive 9 times 2 is positive 18. Then negative 9 times negative 3 is positive 27. Then minus 18 is equal to 0. So here we have negative 27 and positive 27. This would be 0. And 18 minus 18, this would be 0. So therefore 0 is equals to 0. So the second solution is correct. How about the third one? So the third one is x equals to 3. So substitute it to our equation. We have 3 cubed plus 2 times 3 squared minus 9 times 3. 9 times 3. Then minus 18 is equals to 0. So 3 cubed is 27. Then 3 times 3, 9 times 2 is 18, and 9 times 3 is negative 27 and minus 18. So again, 27 minus 27, this is 0. 18 minus 18, this is 0. So therefore 0 is equals to 0. So here we already verify that all the solutions satisfy our equation. Therefore, we are correct. So let's try the next method. I mean the next method in solving quadratic equations. But before we are going to move to the next method, I would like to advise you that in solving quadratic equations by factoring, so you need to have a strong knowledge in 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 factoring quadratic expressions. So use those knowledge in order to solve the roots. So again class, yung tawag dito sa ating solution are roots. Especially for quadratic, these are the roots, or even cubic, ito yung mga roots nila. So that is another term to represent the solution of our equation, that is known as the roots. So here we have 3 roots, and in the previous we have 2 roots, since we only have 2 solutions. Now for 3 solutions, that is known as 3 roots. Okay, so please study factoring kasi makagamit natin dito, ma-apply natin dito sa first natin na method. Now if ever there are some expressions na medyo hindi na siya pwede ma-factor, or may mga quadratic equation na of this form. Let's say we have here a quadratic equation of ax squared minus c is equals to 0. So in this case, our b here, or the bx, is equal to 0. So wala tayong middle term. We only have the first term and the last term. So how are we going to solve that? By root property class, you need to transpose this constant on the other side. So we have now ax squared is equals to positive c. Then since we only after with x, so we divide both sides by a. So we have here x squared is equals to c over a, and then square root both sides, so that x na lang yung matira kasi the same exponent, the same index, this would be cancelled out. So x now is equals to positive or negative square root of c over a. So therefore we are using the square root method. That's why it is termed as the root property. So ganito lang, and this method can be applied if our given quadratic equation are of this form: x squared minus c is equal to 0, wherein our middle term is unknown or 0. So let's try. We have here our first example. The first one is 9x squared minus 7 is equals to 0. Here we cannot factor this, although this is of the form x squared minus y squared, but 7 here, the last term, is not a perfect square. Therefore we cannot apply directly factoring by difference of two squares. So the best way to solve this is by using the root property method. So again, for the root property, transpose the constant on the other side. So what's left here is 9x squared is equals to magiging positive 7 na. And then eliminate 9 by dividing both sides by 9. So we have here x squared is equals to 7 over 9. Here, take square roots both sides so that the square of the x can be cancelled out. So we now have x is equals to positive and negative square root of 7 over 9 here. Please don't forget the two possible solutions. Since square root siya, our index is an even number, therefore we have two possible solutions, the positive side and the negative side. Kasi diba, remember that for a quadratic equation, we have two solutions or two roots. So if we simplify this further, we have x sub 1, our first root or our first solution, is a positive 1. So square root of 7 all over 9. Square root of 7 all over 9. The answer is equal to square root of 7 all over 9. I mean all over 3 pala. Square root of 7 all over 3, or this is approximately equal to, in decimal, this is approximately equal to 0.88. How about the second solution or second root? That is negative square root of 7 all over 9 equal to negative square root of 7 all over 3, approximately equal to negative 0.88. So they have the same magnitude but opposite in direction, because here this is positive 0.88, the other one is negative 0.88. So if we try to verify this, okay, let's just use the exact value. So for x is equals to positive 7 over square root of 7 over 3, so we have here 9 times square root of 7 all over 3, then squared, minus 7 is equals to 0. So distribute the square on both the numerator and the denominator, so we have here 7 na lang, and then the other one is 9 minus 7 is equals to 0. So here 9 can be cancelled out, so we now have 7 minus 7 is equals to 0. So therefore this is 0 equals to 0. So our first solution is correct. How about the second, which is negative square root of 7 all over 3? So here we have 9 times square root of 7 all over 3, negative pala ito, then squared, minus 7 is equal to 0. Now if we distribute this, of course, masali si negative 1 kasi may negative number, squared, and then we have square root of 7 squared all over 3 squared, minus 7 is equal to 0. Of course, square root of negative 1 is 1, so magiging positive na yan. Then since yung index dito at yung exponent are the same, so magiging 7 na lang yan all over 9 minus 7 is equal to 0. So here 9 can be cancelled out, so what's left is 7 minus 7 is equal to 0. Therefore this is 0, which is equal to 0. So therefore we already verified that our solutions, the two roots, is correct or are correct. So let's have the second example. Let's say we have here 3x squared, so we have 3x squared plus 27 is equal to 0. So this is another case, and I think I am expecting here that we will arrive an imaginary number na solution. So here again, transpose the constant on the other side, so we have now 3x squared is equal to negative 27. So here, divide both sides by 3. So makancel yung 3. What's left is x squared is equal to negative 27 divided 3. And what is negative 27 divided 3? That is equal to negative 9. And then here, take square root in both sides. So we have now, makancel na tong exponent tsaka index. So we have now x is equal to square root of negative 9. And remember, if we have square root of AB, this can be rewritten as square root of A times square root of B. So from the radical property. So this can be rewritten as square root of negative 1 or times 9, or this could be equal to square root of negative 1 times square root of 9. So here, what is square root of 9? We all know that the principal square root of 9 is positive 3. So we have here 3, or just say plus and minus 3 square root of negative 1. And remember, square root of negative 1 is an imaginary number represented by the variable I. So yan yung representation niya. So our final answer pala is equal to x is equals to plus or minus 3i. So here, our solution is an imaginary number. So imaginary number. Because of this negative square root of negative 1 here. Now we can still check this one. So we have here the first root is positive 3i, the second root is, or the second solution is negative 3i. So let's verify, class, even if this is an imaginary number. So for x is equals to positive 3i, so plug in, we have 3 times 3i squared plus 27 is equals to 0. Then distribute the exponent 2 on each term here, or in the constant and the variable I, so, or the imaginary number I. So we have here 3 times, this would be 9, and then I can be square root of -1, then squared, plus 27 is equal to 0. So magiging 9 na si 3 kasi na 3 squared. Since yung square root of -1 raised to the power of 2, since the exponent and the index are the same, therefore makacancel na, what's left is 3 times 9 times -1 plus 27. So 9 times -1 is -9 times 3 is -27 plus 27, that is equal to 0. So here, this could be 0 is equal to 0. So therefore, our first solution, which is an imaginary number of 3i, is correct. How about the second one, which is the negative of 3i? Again, substitute. So we have here 3 times -3i squared plus 27 is equal to 0. So again, i-distribute mo isa-isa sa loob. So 3 times, we have a negative number squared, tapos may 3 pa squared, tapos meron pang imaginary number na I, which can be rewritten as negative I squared of -1 squared plus 27 is equal to 0. So here we can simplify further. 3 times -1 squared is 1, times 3 times 3 is 9, so 9. Then since this square root, the index and the exponent are the same, so this can be cancelled out. What's left is -1. So ito na. Then plus 27 is equals to 0. So here 9 times -1 is -9. -9 times 3 is positive 27. I mean -27. So -27 plus 27 is equals to 0. So -27 plus 27, this is 0. So we already verified that both solutions, or both roots, the positive 3i and negative 3i, satisfies our quadratic equation. Therefore, both of them are correct. So let's have another, or last example by this method, this root property method. So we have here our last example, example number 3. Let's say we have here an expression inside the parenthesis, x plus 3 squared is equals to 16. So again, class, you should transpose this, or you should transform this into this form. Ax squared plus c is equal to 0. So therefore, dapat 0 lang dito sa one side. You don't have numbers there. So if you have a number there, so be sure to transpose that one on the other side. So since in our example here, we have a number on the right side, so we need to transpose this on the left side to make it 0 here. So let's try that one. So we have here x plus 3 squared minus 16 is equal to 0. Again, sorry, kasi tinatranspose natin, then ibabalik din lang pala natin. So it's okay. Basta as long as kung complicated or complex na mga equations, be sure to combine those numbers muna sa left side bago i-transpose natin sa right side. But it's up to you. Depends upon our preferences, ang style po sa ating pag-solve ng problem. So again, binabalik ko siya ulit. So we have x plus 3 squared is equal to 16. Then take square root both sides. So you have square root both sides para cancel out na yung square dito, so makancel dito. What's left is x plus 3 is equal to square root of 16. And what is square root of 16? That is positive and negative 4. So since meron pa tayong 3 dito, transpose mo to sa kabila para ma-x na lang. So x is equals to plus minus 4 minus 3. So therefore, our first equation, first solution or first root is, you can also rewrite this as -3 plus 4, and the second one is x sub 2 is equal to -3 minus 4. And what is -3 plus 4? That is positive 1. How about -3 minus 4? That is -7. So therefore, we have two solutions. We have -7 and positive 1. To verify this, plug these values to our original equation. Let's say at x is equals to -7. So we have here -7 plus 3 squared is equals to 16. So let's verify. -7 plus 3 is equals to -4. Then squared is equal to 16. So -4 times -4 is positive 16. So therefore, the equation is correct. So our first solution is correct. How about the second one? X equals to 1. Again, plug in the value. So we have 1 plus 3 squared is equals to 16. And 1 plus 3 is positive 4 squared is equals to 16. So 4 squared is 16, which is the same with 16. So therefore, our roots, negative 7 and 1, satisfies our given quadratic equation of this form. Now, since we already know two methods, let's have the other method. And I think the other method would be much more trickier, and it will take you much longer to solve. Kasi sa form na ito, still we have a form of ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. So kapag hindi kasi ito hindi ito siya ma-factor, if we cannot factor this one easily, or even if maka-factor tayo easily, if it is not a perfect square trinomial, it is okay because you can use method 1. But if our quadratic equation is not a perfect square, so let's say itong ating quadratic expression here is not a perfect square, then you use this method. That's why it is called completing the square, kasi you make this quadratic expression a perfect square. So kaya kinocomplete niya kasi may kulang dito. So let's do that, class. Let's do that. So let's say we are given an example. So ito yung process ng pag-complete ng square. So we have here x squared plus 6x minus 5 is equal to 0. So here, una mong gawin, you should isolate the two terms that contains the x squared and the 6x. So that contains the variable. And then, try to look at the constant. So the constant term is negative 5. Lahat ng constant sa left side, i-transpose mo lahat yan sa other side. This is the first step. Isolate this number or constant on the left side. So we now have x squared plus 6x is equals to positive 5 na siya. After isolating, so we now have here an incomplete quadratic equation dito kasi wala siyang constant dito. So what we need to do is we need to complete this. We need to complete this incomplete or lacking na quadratic expression. So to do that, class, remember, for a perfect square trinomial, remember the polynomial or the binomial expansion. So let's say if we have x plus a squared, but the resulting answer is the first term is the square of the first term in the binomial, x squared. Then the second term can be solved by multiplying the second term and the first term and the exponent, right? So we have here a times x, ax times 2 is plus 2ax. And then how about the third term? The third term is just the square of the second term in the binomial. So we have here plus a squared. So in this case, class, since we need to transform this into a perfect square that would look like this, so ano yung kulang niya na term? So the lacking term for our given x squared plus 6x is the constant here, this a squared here. So how are we going to do that? So let's reverse. So let's say that we need to find a here, diba? Kasi yun lang naman yung kulang dito eh. So therefore, in order to find that, we equate this middle term onto the middle term here. So equate natin sila para ma-solve natin si a. Kasi si a lang yung kulang para ma-perfect square si x squared plus x. So how are we going to do that? So let's equate their middle terms. So ito yung middle terms nila. Middle terms. So we have here 6x, which is from our example, which is equal to the middle term of a perfect square. Kasi diba, kailangan natin siya i-convert into a perfect square. So dapat magiging equal sila. Since equal na yung first term nila, x squared tsaka x squared, so don't need na. So yung middle term na lang. So here, we can cancel out x here, and then divide by 2. So what's left? Ang a natin pala is 6 divided by 2, which is equals to 3. So therefore, a here is equals to 3. So we can now transform this x squared plus 6x into x squared plus 6x. And then what is yung third term niya? So just the square of this a. Since we already know that a is 3, so square of 3 is plus 9. And then isulat natin yung equal sign galing dito sa taas is equal to 5. Now class, as you've noticed, our new equation, which is this one, hindi na siya pareho sa ating previous equation, which is only look like this. Diba? Kasi dinagdagan natin, meron na siyang dinagdag na 9 dito sa left side. So in order to make the equation equal, parang walang nagbabago, so if we add 9 on the left side, we need also to add 9 on the other side. So plus 9 para mabalance na yung ating equation. Meaning wala tayong, hindi natin sinasobrahan yung other side and hindi rin nasobrahan yung other side. So this is the marabag, ito yung this is the harmony of an in algebra na dapat you should know how to balance equation. So here we can simplify this 5 plus 9, and then since we already know that this expression is equivalent to x plus a squared, right? Kasi perfect square na ito eh. Kasi yung last term is a perfect number. So therefore, we can write this one easily as x plus 3 squared. Diba? Kasi perfect square na itong x squared plus 6x plus 9. And if you want to verify that, so you can expand this binomial. Then your answer would look like this, yung x squared plus 6x plus 9. And then 9 plus 5 is equals to 14. So sulat mo 14. And as you've noticed here, class, this is of the form from our previous method, which is equal to ax squared is equals to c, diba? And then divide by a na lang para makuha natin cx, and then take the square root on both sides, diba? Ganun lang. So yun din yung ating gagamitin dito sa completing the squares, since naka-arrive na tayo ng ganung forma from the previous method. So let's try that. So i-try natin pag-solve. So here, erase mo natin to. So dito na lang tayo sa itaas. Okay, here we have x plus 3 squared is equal to 14. So take the square root both sides. So makancel lang yung 2 dito, makancel na yung radical sign. So we now have x plus 3 is equals to plus or minus square root of 14. Actually, square root of 14 cannot be expressed because this is an irrational. Because its only factor is 7 and 2. So here, transpose the positive 3 on the other side. So we now have x is equals to negative 3 plus minus square root of 14. Therefore, our first root or value is negative 3 plus square root of 14. The second one is x sub 2 is equals to negative 3 minus square root of 14. So if you want to verify this, class, so it's up to you. It's your homework or assignment that you should verify this in order to know whether our solution or our root satisfies our equation. So that's it, class, for the method of completing the square. So first, isolate muna yung two terms that contains variable. Then yung number or your constant, i-isolate mo siya sa right, sa kabila. And then complete the incomplete quadratic equation. Kasi diba nagiging 2 terms na ito, nagiging x squared plus 6x na lang. So use this principle, yung perfect square trinomial, which is we expand a binomial expression to the power of 2. So ganun lang. So para maintindihan, let's try another one. Erase muna natin to. Okay, erase. So let's have the second example. we are given 9x squared minus 6x minus 4 is equals to 0. So here we have a variable for the first term. Again, kung yung una natin gawin, you can change this in this form na magiging x squared lang. X squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. So it's up to you, class. You can extract this or you can eliminate the coefficient here na dapat 1 lang talaga, wala nang iba kasi dito 9 eh. You can do that or you can just remain that one still. So it's up to you. Anyways, yung answer nating ma-arrive are still the same. So here we can say that 9x squared minus 6x minus 4 is equivalent to this. Let's say we divide both sides by 1 over 9. So what's left is x squared minus 6 over 9x minus 4 over 9 is equal to 0 pa rin. So here, mas madali ito kasi x squared na lang. Or you can proceed to completing the square with the 9x squared. It's up to you. But sa akin, i-x squared na lang to para mas medyo malinis tingnan. And then, again, you need to group this. So, si x squared tsaka si x, i-group mo siya. And then, titingnan mo yung constant. So, itong constant na to, again, i-isolate natin sa kabila. So, transpose natin on the left side. So, what's left is x squared minus 6 over 9x is equals to positive 4 over 9. So, here, we need to complete the square of this. So, again, this is of the form, this is of the form of x squared plus 2ax plus a squared. This is of the form sana. Kaso siya, kulang siya ng third term. So, that's why we need to equate this both. Kasi this would be factored out as x plus a squared. So, since yung meron lang sa kanila is yung middle term, di ba yung middle term ito? Middle term tsaka yung middle term. So, let's solve for a para meron na siyang final term dito si negative 6 over 9x. So, we need to solve for a. So, let's solve for a. So, to solve for a, you have negative 6 all over 9x is equals to 2ax. Since x is common to both sides, so makancel out ito, then divide by 2 para si a na lang talaga yung matira. So, our a here is equals to negative 6 over 9. Proceed to multiplication, take the reciprocal of our divisor, 2, maging 1/2. Then, 6 can be written as 3 times 2. So, makancel out yung 2. Then, 3 divided by 3 over 9 is, this one is 3 times 3. So, makancel na yung isang 3. What's left is a is equals to negative 1/3. So, negative 1/3 lang pala. And then, square this negative 1/3 in order to get the third term. Kasi diba, dito is a squared. So, therefore, our new complete na square or complete na siya na quadratic equation is x squared minus 6 over 9 x. Then, square the a here. Since negative 1/3, square mo siya magiging positive. Plus 1 over 9. Which is equal to 4 over 9. Again, class, since nagdagdag tayo ng 1 over 9 sa left side, we also need to add 1 over 9 on the right side to make the equation stable or hindi siya nag-change. So, plus 1 over 9 dito. And then, we all know this. Kasi diba, perfect square na ito. And this could be of the form x plus a squared. Diba? And then we all know the a, the value of our a. A is equal to negative 1/3. So, therefore, we can rewrite this as x minus 1/3 squared. So, na perfect square naman siya. Then, add these two fractions. So, 4 plus 1 is 5. So, we have here 5 over 9. And then, take the square root of both sides. Square root of both sides. This can be cancelled out. The same yung exponent tsaka index. So, what's left is x minus 1/3, which is equal to square root of 5 all over square root of 9. And I think we already know the square root of 9. The principal root of 9 is 3. So, we can write here plus minus square root of 5 all over 3. Then, transpose this negative 1/3 on the other side. So again class, meron tong positive and negative ha, kasi nag-involve na sila ng square root. So dalawa yung solution. So here we now have x is equals to yung negative 1/3 may positive na yan. So we have now 1/3 plus or minus square root of 5 all over 3. So we have two solutions here. The first one is x sub 1 is equals to 1/3 plus square root of 5 all over 3, while the second one is x sub 2 is equals to 1/3 minus square root of 5 all over 3. So therefore, this is our solution for our quadratic equation using the method of completing the squares. So yun lang class. So let's try another example, or I think the last example of quadratic equation by using the method of completing the squares. So the third example, how about if you're given 2x squared minus 4x plus 3 is equals to 0. So again, unang-una natin gawin yung class, dapat magiging ganito siya. Dapat x squared lang, walang ibang coefficient or constant dito. Then plus bx plus c is equals to 0. So dapat 1 lang yung coefficient ng ating leading term. So here meron tayong 2, so we need to multiply or divide 2 on both sides. So we have here 2. Then what's left is x squared na lang. The second one is 4 over 2x plus 3 over 2 is equals to 0. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. So therefore we have x squared minus 2x. Then ito, okay, isalot muna natin. Equals to 0. Then again class, for completing the square, iwan mo yung x squared tsaka 2x or mga terms that involves variables on the left side, and then isolate this or extract this, eliminate these 3 halves on the left side. Dapat i-transpose mo to siya on the right side. Siya lang again yung constant talaga. Lahat ng mga terms that involves variables remain as it is on the left side. So here meron lang tayong x squared minus 2x is equal to yung 3 half, may negative na yan. So, negative 3 halves. So, here, we need to complete this. Kasi nagiging incomplete na to siya. So, we need to transform this of this form. So, we have here x squared plus 2ax plus a squared. So, this is a perfect square trinomial. So, its factor is x plus a squared. So, again, i-equate mo yung middle term para makuha natin yung value ni a, para makuha natin yung kanyang third term. So we solve for a. So let's solve for a. So we have here negative 2x is equals to 2ax. So since common sa x sa both sides, makancel to and divide by 2. Therefore our a is equals to negative 1. And then square that one both sides. Square the a in order to get the third term. So therefore, our new complete na quadratic equation or expression is x squared minus 2x and then square of a. So we have here square of negative 1 is plus 1. Then copy the constant kanina na negative 3 halves. Since nagdagdag tayo ng 1 sa left side, so dagdag din tayo ng 1 sa right side. So that is plus 1. So here we now have this one. Itong forma na to is already a perfect square. And what is its factor? So again, balik tayo dito. So that is just x plus a squared. Ano yung a natin? Negative 1. So we have x minus 1 kasi negative squared is equals to negative 3 halves plus 1. So kapag may calculator ka, negative 3 halves plus 1. So you now have negative 1 half. So sulat mo, that is equal to negative 1 half. Then take square root both sides. So we have, since equal yung exponent tsaka index, so what's left is x minus 1 is equals to this one can be factored out as square root of negative 1 and 1 half. Kasi diba, expect na even yung index natin tsaka may negative, so therefore may imaginary ito. So this can be further simplified into negative 1 times square root of 1 half. So here we all know that this square root of negative 1 is equal to the imaginary number I. So we now have x minus 1 is equals to um, plus and minus square root of 1 half I. Then transpose this one to the other side. So we now have x is equals to 1 plus or minus square root of 1 all over 2 I. Or we can simplify this square root of 1 over 2. Um, we can rationalize that one because that one can be equal to square root of 1 over square root of 2. And what is square root of 2? I mean square root of 1, this is just equal to 1. Since my radical expression tayo sa denominator, so we need to rationalize para mas magandang tingnan yung answer natin. So in rationalizing, again, recall our discussion. So just multiply by square root of 2 in order to make the exponent of 2 squared para makancel na si index. Then don't forget to write I. And afterwards, this would be equal to 1 plus or minus square root of 2, and on the denominator, that is square root of 2 squared, so magiging 2 na lang siya. Then I. So therefore, this is our solution for our quadratic equation using the method completing the squares. So we have two answers here. The first one is 1 plus square root of 2 all over 2i. The second one is x of 2 is equals to 1 minus square root of 2 all over 2i. Okay class, our solution here are both complex number. So unsa din ni siya? Anong ibig sabihin ng complex number? Complex number is of the form a plus bi, wherein a here corresponds to our real number. So real number to siya class, but for bi here, this corresponds to our imaginary number. So therefore, yung 1 dito is a real number, and then itong square root of 2 over 2i is the imaginary part. So both of them can be called as complex number. So complex number yan sila. So we have two solutions here. Now if you want to verify this, so you can plug this one, you can plug in this back to our original quadratic equation. So assignment nyo na lang class, i-verify nyo. So since we already through with completing the squares, so let's jump to the next method. Actually the next method is derived from completing the squares, because it would be easier, especially if I mean lahat naman, most of the times in mathematics you have this generic formula. So let's find out if there is a generic formula that will calculate directly the roots of the quadratic equation, the roots or the solution. So let's have the standard form of the quadratic equation. So the standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. So lahat ganito yung forma. Meron ka talagang coefficient sa leading term, meron kang coefficient sa middle term, and also you have constant. So let's try to solve this class. Let's try to solve its roots or solution by having a generic formula known as the quadratic formula. So let's assume that this expression here is not a perfect square. So we use completing the square method. So completing the square. So ito yung method na gagamitin natin. So same from the previous method. So again, from the previous method, i-isolate mo lang yung mga variables sa left side. So si ax squared plus bx, itira mo lang, then i-transpose mo si c sa kabila, is equals to negative c. So yun lang. And then we should convert this into a perfect square. So we need to transform this into this form. This is x squared plus 2ax plus a squared, because we all know that its factor is x plus a squared. Since si x squared dito wala siyang katabi na variable, I mean wala siyang katabi dito na coefficient, and then sa atong original equation is meron ng a dito, so we need to eliminate a first. So how are we going to do that? So in our equation pala, we need to divide both sides by a. So ax squared plus bx is equal to negative c. So multiply both sides by 1 over a, or divide. So what's left is x squared plus b over a x is equals to negative c over a. So okay na. This one was already the same or similar with this. So in order to make this a perfect square, so we need to solve for the small letter a. So we need to make this incomplete expression equal to this perfect square trinomial. So equate the middle term, or equate the middle term. So we have here b over ax is equals to 2ax. So let's solve for a. Since x common both sides, makancel ato. Divide by 2. Divide by 2. So therefore, our a now is equals to b over 2a. Yun lang. And then, use this to transform this. So we are now ready to transform this one. So it will be look like this. X squared plus b over ax. And then how about for its third term? So that is just the square of our value for a. So since our value for a is b over 2a, so i-square mo lang yan. So that would be equal to plus b squared all over 4a squared. And then is equals to negative c over a. Since nagdagdag tayo ng b squared all over 4a squared sa left side, idagdag din natin sa right side. So plus b squared all over 4a squared. And here we already know that this is a perfect square trinomial. And yung factor niya is just equal to x plus a squared. So ano yung a natin? B all over 2a. So we can rewrite this as x plus b all over 2a squared, which is equal to this. So mas better to class kapag i-simplify natin to, or i-merge natin to as a single quotient. So its factor or LCD is 4a squared. So 4a squared divided by a is 4a times c. So we have minus 4ac. Then dito plus b squared. Or you can just write that one as b squared minus 4ac all over 4a squared. Then take the square root on both sides. Square lang natin yan. So that makancel out na yung exponent tsaka yung index. So what's left is x plus b all over 2a, which is equal to square root of b squared minus 4ac all over square root of 4a squared. So from the denominator, we've noticed na yung 4 magiging ano to siya. Okay, copy mo natin yung numerator. Minus 4ac. We already know that this can be rewritten as square root of 2 squared times a squared. And since yung exponent ng dalawa, yung 2 tsaka a are the same with the index, so makancel out, ma-extract silang dalawa. So magiging 2a na lang ito. And then, transpose this b over 2a on the left side para si x na lang talaga yung maiwan. So x now is equals to negative b over 2a plus or minus, kasi may square root to, square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Since this is two fractions, so we can combine this one together. So we now have 2a, then the numerator is negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac. So this is our solution, or these are the roots of our quadratic equation. And then I think this is famous because this is the quadratic formula. So just remember this. Kung hindi ka nakaka-remember, ito yung derivation niya kung bakit naging ganyan yung formula natin. And of course, if we want to split them out, so you have our first root, which is equals to negative b plus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And the other one is x sub 2. We have negative b pa rin. This time minus na. Minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Yun lang. So if you have a given coefficient for your leading term, the middle term, and the last term, which is the constant, then you can just plug it here in order to solve for the roots of our quadratic equation. So since we already know the derivation of our quadratic formula, then let's solve some examples. So let's try this one. Kung effective ba ito? Kung tama ba yung ating quadratic formula na ating nade-derive. So we have our first example. So the first one is x squared minus x minus 6 is equals 0. So dapat this would be of the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equals 0. So here from our equation we know that a is 1, b, the middle term, is negative 1, and our constant c is equals to negative 6. And then we all know that our first solution is equals to, from the quadratic formula that we just derived, negative b plus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So here our b is negative 1, so we have negative times negative 1 plus square root of negative 1 squared minus 4 times a is 1, c is negative 6, so negative 6 all over 2 times 1. So here this would be equal to positive 1 plus square root of this is 1 minus 4, so magiging 1 plus 24 all over 2. So here this will be equal to 1 plus square root of 25 all over 2. So we now have 1 plus 5 kasi principal root lang yung kinakailangan natin. 1 plus 5 all over 2. So here we have 5 plus 1 is 6, so that is 6 all over 2, which is equal to 3. So therefore this is our first root or solution. How about the second one? So x sub 2 is equals to negative b minus b squared over minus 4ac all over 2a. So para madali tayo, dito na lang tayo na part. Kasi di ba dito lang naman nag-change yung sign from positive magiging negative na. So let's copy 1 minus square root of 25 all over 2. So that is equal to 1 minus 5 all over 2. So that is negative 4 all over 2. So we now have negative 2. So therefore, the solution or the root of our quadratic equation is, or are, the elements negative 2 and 3. So yun lang. Just remember the quadratic formula. So let's try another one. So yung ano dito class, yung gagamitin nyo na way is that ano lang, direct substitution. So substitute lang yung mga values sa ating quadratic formula. So let's say we have another example, example number 2. We have here x squared minus 81 is equal to 0. So here we always write this the standard form para, or this would serve as our basis, ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So let's look for the coefficients. So for our a, this is 1. Then for our coefficient of the middle term, we don't have middle term here, so this is 0. And then our constant is equal to negative 81. So use the famous quadratic formula. For our first root, we have negative b plus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Then plug in the values. For our b, that is 0, so 0 plus square root of, this is 0, minus 4, tas our a is 1, our c is negative 81 all over 2 times 1. So here magiging square root na lang ito kasi may 0 na, so we now have square root of, what is negative 4 times negative 81? That is equal to 324. So we have here 324 all over 2 positive. So square root of 324. So if you have calculator, 324 square root, that is equal to 18. So we have here 18 over 2, that is equal to 9. So therefore our first root or solution is 9. How about our second root? Our second solution is negative b, this time minus na, hindi na addition. So we have here b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So class, just plug in the values, but dito na lang tayo sa banda na ito. Anyways, same lang naman yung mga values nga ng a. So we have here 0, but this time minus na class, hindi na siya positive. Then 0 minus 4 times a is 1, c is negative 81. Divided by 2 times 1. Here, 0 naman, so magiging negative na lang ito. Negative square root of 324 all over 2. And the final answer, the next step is negative 18 over 2. The answer is negative 9. So therefore, the roots or the solution of our quadratic equation is, or are the elements negative 9 and positive 9. So you can verify this by plugging it back to our original equation. So just remember the formula, class. So let's try the last example. So we have here 2x squared. So we have 2x squared minus 4x plus 3 equals to 0. So we should convert this of this form, ax squared plus bx plus c is equals 0. So here from our given, the variable for our leading term is 2, the coefficient pala. Then the coefficient of the middle term is negative 4, and then for our final term, the constant is equal to 3. Then for the first root, use again the formula, negative b plus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So our b is negative 4, so we have negative times negative 4 plus square root of negative 4 squared minus 4 times a is 2, our c is 3 all over 2 times 2. So here this is equal to positive 4 na ito plus 4, which is equal to the square root of 4 squared. This is 16, so 16 na lang to. So this is 16 minus 4 times 2 is 8 times 3, 24. So minus 24 all over 2 times 2 is 4. So here, this is 4 plus 16 minus 24. I think that is negative 6. Negative 8. So we have here square root of negative 8 all over 4. To simplify this further, so we can write this as square root of 8 times square root of negative 1. So we all know that square root of negative 1 is an imaginary number I all over 4. So therefore we can say that this is 4 plus square root of 8 can be further simplified as 2 square root of 2. So that is 4 plus 2 square root of 2i all over 4. We can break it down into 4 over 4 plus 2 square root of 2 over 4i. So this would be equal to 1 plus 1 half square root of 2i. So this is our first solution for our first root. For our second root, except 2, so again negative b, but this time minus na yung isang counterpart niya. So b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That is equal to dito na lang tayo sa bandang ito kasi same lang naman sila. However, itong plus sign dito magiging minus sign na. So lagay na natin dito, that is 4 minus square root of 16 minus 24 all over 4. So here this would be equal to 4 minus square root of negative 8 all over 4. So again 4 plus, this can be written as square root of 8 and square root of -1. So sa -1 is an imaginary number all over 4. So here, this is 4. That is not positive pala. Sorry. That is negative. Kasi the second root na yung hinahanap natin. This minus. So that is 4 minus 2 square root of 2. Kasi square root of 8 is equal to 2 square root of 2 divided by 4. So since may dalawang terms, so we can split them into 2 fractions. So we have 4 over 4 plus 2 square root of 2. Again, di talaga to plus. Sorry. Naki-careless na naman. That is minus 2 square root of 2 all over 4, then I, and then 4 divided by 4 is 1, minus 2 divided by 4 is 1/2, so 1/2 square root of 2 I. So therefore this is our second root. So our solution pala sa ating quadratic equations are the complex numbers. So complex numbers ito sila. Set of complex numbers 1 minus square root of 2, 1/2 square root of 2i, and 1 plus 1/2 square root of 2i. So therefore these are our solutions or roots of our quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. So on the next topic is we're going to talk about discriminant. So in discriminant class, this is from the quadratic formula. So sa ating quadratic formula kasi, from there we can detect easily the possible outcomes of our roots or our solution. Kasi meron silang mga possible outcomes, or it's not actually outcomes, or yung yung siguro yung kanilang anyo or nature. Or sige, I think the proper name is nature. So for our discriminant, our main criteria is our quadratic formula. So as you've noticed, sa ating general formula sa ating quadratic is x is equals to -b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So this is the critical part here. Diba? Sa square root natin. This is the critical part here in order to tell whether our answer is a real number or an imaginary number or a combination or a complex number. So, dyan natin malaman from this square root. Kasi, kapag yung answer ng ating square root or kapag yung answer nating expression sa loob ng square root is negative, so there is a higher possibility that it is a imaginary number or a complex number. So, we have these types. Let's say if the inside expression, so we're just aftering with the square root ha, kasi ito yung parang criteria natin dito, minus 4ac, and the expression inside the square root sign, yung b squared minus 4ac would considered as our discriminant. So ito yung criteria ng ating discriminant. Ito yung titingnan natin, b squared minus 4ac. So remember, our general form for our quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. Take note. So for our first rule or criteria, how about if the answer of our b squared minus 4ac or our discriminant is greater than 0? So meaning, anong ibig sabihin dito kapag greater than 0? The answer is positive. So it will be positive 1, positive 2, positive 3. So kapag meron tayong positive dito na answer, therefore, wala siyang negative square root. So hindi siya magiging imaginary. At pwede siyang complex, but to be specific, we have real numbers. So this is 2 roots, since 2 pa rin tayo. Then unequal and real. Why unequal, sir? because of course our first root is negative b plus the square root of the discriminant, which is positive. So may value yan, all over 2a. Of course, our second root is negative b minus square root of the positive value of our discriminant, all over 2a. So therefore, both of them are different because of this plus and minus sign. So therefore, they are unequal. That's why we have two roots but unequal and a real number. So real number siya, class. How about if our b squared minus 4ac is less than 0? So anong ibig sabihin nito? The answer of our discriminant is negative. So negative. Kapag mag-negative to, class, meron tayong, syempre, dalawa pa rin yung roots. So 2 roots, still unequal, but this time that is not real but imaginary. So imaginary or complex. So complex na siya, class, pag less than 0 yung ating sagot dito. So 2 roots, unequal, then imaginary or complex. Let's say for example, our first part here, x sub 1 is equals to negative b, yung isa is plus, then ito, meron itong something square root of a number, kasi negative to, or I, all over 2a, and then the second one is x sub 2, negative b, magiging minus na. So therefore, both are not equal, then square root of negative number, or I, all over 2a. So unequal pa rin. Unequal pa rin sila. How about if our discriminant b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0? So meaning our discriminant is 0. So kapag mag-0 to, from our quadratic formula, if the b squared minus 4ac is 0, magiging ganito na lang. X is equal to negative b all over 2a. Kasi diba, this one will be 0, so negative b over 2a na lang. Ito na lang yung matitira. So here, negative b over 2a. Do you think isa lang yung sagot natin? Siyempre, hindi pwede na isa lang yung sagot. Actually, you can add here plus or minus 0. So the first answer is x sub 1 is equals to negative b over 2a plus 0. And the other one is negative b 2a minus 0. Of course, any number added or subtracted to 0, 0, I mean, wala pa rin, just the number. So kaya nga, yung ating possible outcomes dito is 2 roots pa rin, kasi syempre quadratic, but equal. Ito ha, equal na sila. Kasi diba, equal ang value negative b over 2a, tsaka negative b over 2a. Tsaka, real number na siya, class. So, real number. So, ayun lang yung ating tatandaan, class. And then I think meron pang isa siguro. Okay, idadagdag lang natin. Let's say our b is 0. So wala tayong b dito. And then a and c are positive. So the coefficient of a and c are positive. So what will happen to our discriminant? So b squared minus 4ac. So si b daw magiging 0, then both of them are positive. Therefore, yung resulting answer inside the radical sign is negative 4ac, which is a negative number. So therefore, again, class, may negative number na naman. So our new quadratic formula for this case, x is equals to negative b plus or minus square root of dito is negative 4ac na, kasi diba wala na si b, or dito rin walang b dito, that is 0, all over 2a, kasi si a positive. So therefore here we have plus or minus square root of 4ac I all over 2a. Here, class, we have 2 roots. So 2 roots, kasi diba the first root is the positive square root of 4ACI all over 2A. The other one is negative. X sub 2 is equal to negative square root of 4ACI all over 2A. Two roots, and they are unequal. Although same yung appearance nila kasi square root of 4ACI over 2A, but they have different signs. So we considered this as unequal, but unequal and imaginary. So therefore walang real. So two roots, unequal and imaginary. However, if A and C, let's say if our B is 0, A and C are negative. So let's say one of A, kasi hindi din pwede yung both A and C are positive or negative, same pa rin pala. Si A ma-positive or ma-negative, same pa rin yung effect. Kasi negative 4 times positive A, negative 4 times negative A is negative, then times the negative, maging negative pa rin. So wala pa rin. So A are positive or negative, same pa rin. Two roots, unequal and imaginary. So again, just remember this. I think the important here is this 3, the first 3. Let's say our b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, maging positive, therefore may dalawa tayong roots. They are unequal but real numbers. If b squared minus 4ac, our determinant, ito is less than 0, therefore negative yung sagot sa ating sa loob ng radical sign. So therefore we have two roots, unequal but imaginary na or complex number. And then we have here b squared minus 4ac equal to 0. This time yung roots natin is dalawa pa rin, but they are equal and real numbers. So real numbers na sila, class. So I think this is all for the discriminant. So let's try to apply this on some sa mga quadratic formulas. So let's say you are given a quadratic formula. So erase muna natin to. Let's say you are given this. Let's say you have 2x squared minus 4x plus 1 is equal to 0. So let's tell what is the nature of its roots. So nature of its roots or its solution. So this could be of the form ax squared, the standard form of our quadratic equation, plus bx plus c is equals to 0. So here we can say that a is equals to 2, b is equals to negative 4, and our c is equals to 1. So here our discriminant, is equal to b squared minus 4ac. So yun na. And then we have three criteria, whether it is less than 0, greater than 0, or equal to 0. So here let's substitute. Our b is negative 4, so negative 4 squared minus 4, our a is 2, our c is 1. So here negative 4 squared is 16, minus 4 times 2 is 8, times 1 is 8 pa rin. So 16 minus 8, the answer is 8. 8 is a positive number. And recall, class, if our discriminant d is greater than 0, therefore you have the nature of our roots kay dalawang roots, but unequal. So iba-iba, unequal and real numbers. So yun lang. This is the nature of our roots, unequal and real numbers. Let's try another one. Let's try another example. So just remember the discriminant na formula. So the second example is 2x squared minus 4x plus 2 is equals 0. So here, our a is 2, b is equals to negative 4, and our c is equals to positive 2. So from our discriminant na formula, we have b squared minus 4ac. Let's tell whether it is less than 0, greater than 0, or equal to 0. So substitute, we have negative 4 squared minus 4 times a is 2, c is 2. So this would be equal to 16. Minus 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 2 16. So 16 minus 16, this is equal to 0. So again, if our determinant d is equal to 0, therefore we have two roots. Then remember from the previous, so since d na, again, balik na lang tayo sa quadratic formula natin, negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So kapag nagiging 0 na to siya, so dalawa pa rin yung sagot natin, but they are the same. So therefore, equal. And what are these? Negative b and 2a. Of course, that one is a real number, so that is real number. So two roots, equal, and real numbers. So let's try the last example. Let's say you are given this. You have 2x squared minus 4x plus 3 is equal to 0. So let's let the coefficients a is equals to 2, b is equals to negative 4, and c is equals to 3. So here we can say that the discriminant has this formula b squared minus 4ac, wherein let's tell whether it is less than 0, greater than 0, or equal to 0. So here, plug in the values or substitute. We have negative 4 squared minus 4 times our a is 2, our c is 3. Negative 4 times 4 is positive 16, minus 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 3 is 24. So 16 minus 24, ano yung sagot natin dito? That is equal to negative 8. And I think negative 8 is less than 0. Therefore, we have two roots. And then, of course, balik tayo sa ating quadratic formula. Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So here, ang kanin siya class, since may imaginary na siya, or yung ating sagot dito is a negative number, therefore meron na siyang I, nakatumbas na I. However, we still have two roots, which is the first is positive I and saka negative I. So therefore, this is still unequal. Okay, unequal. But our answer now is a complex number. So complex siya kasi meron pa rin tayong value sa b. Therefore, complex. It's not imaginary. It's not totally imaginary. Why? Because we still have a real counterpart na negative b over 2a. Therefore, complex lang siya na number. So, complex number. So, okay. Just remember the discriminant formula class in order to tell what is the nature of our quadratic equation. So, let's jump with the application. We need to apply the Pythagorean theorem. And I think you already know the Pythagorean theorem. This is invented by or discovered by Pythagoras. So, in a right triangle, so yung Pythagorean theorem is coming from this right triangle. So, of course, we have an angle here of 90 degrees para magiging right triangle siya. And then we have here the first leg A, and then the second leg is B. And of course, this part here, the longest part of the right triangle, is known as the hypotenuse C. So, Pythagoras come up the relationship between the sides and the hypotenuse. So in his discovery, he derived that the relationship of each sides is the square of their values. So we have here c squared is equals to a squared plus b squared. Therefore, ang square pala ng hypotenuse niya is just the sum of the squares of the two legs, a and b. So ito lang yung ating famous Pythagorean formula. And then, as you've noticed sa ating Pythagorean formula, the exponent here is 2. Therefore, this is a 2-degree equation. That's why Pythagorean theorem is one of the applications of a quadratic formula. Kasi yung exponent na Pythagorean theorem, the Pythagorean formula is to the power of 2. So let's solve. We now have a real application problem. Here, a 30-foot ladder is leaning against the side of a building and is positioned such that the base of the ladder is 18 feet from the base of the building. How far, so how pala ito, how far above the ground is the point where the ladder touches the building? Again, to be sure or to understand clearly the problem, we need to illustrate it in order to visualize what is happening. Here we have a ladder leaning against the side of the building. Let's say this is my building. So yung building natin. And then of course, it's exaggerated lang ito para mag-visualize nyo. Let's say this is a ladder. Okay, may ladder tayo dyan. And then 30-foot ladder siya. So meaning ito yung length ng ating ladder. So this is 30 foot or 30 feet. Ayan, yung isang gitling or guhit stands for feet. And then is positioned such that the base of the ladder is 18 feet from the base of the building. So this is the base of the building. And this is the base of the ladder. So this is 18 feet. So that is 18 feet. Ayan. And then how far above the ground is the point where the ladder touches the building? So ito man, this is the upper point where the ladder touches the building. So therefore, this height right here, so let's just represent this as the A. And then this one is our B, kasi diba, the other side for Pythagorean. And then of course, this is hypotenuse represented by C. So by using the Pythagorean theorem, so yung required pala natin dito, or what is asked in the problem, is the A. Solution using Pythagorean theorem. So Pythagorean theorem. So we have the relationship of c squared is equals to a squared plus b squared. So we all know that c squared is 30 feet. So we have here 30 feet squared is equals to a, yun yung nahanap, squared, plus our b here is 18. So we have here 18 squared. So transpose this on the other side para sa a na lang yung maiwan. So we now have a squared is equals to 30 squared minus 18 squared kasi transpose 18. And then a squared is equals to simplify 30 squared minus 8 squared. So we have here 30 squared minus 18 squared. That is 576. So we have here 576. Then taking the square root on both sides, makancel ang exponent at index. So what's left now is a, which is equal to dalawang values class, always remember dalawang values. Then square root of 576 is equal to 24. Of course, we have here the first root is 24, the second is negative 24. Of course, just take the positive y kasi wala namang height na magiging negative eh. So therefore, just take the positive class. Therefore, our final answer is the distance from the ground to the point where the ladder touches the building is 24. And don't forget to write the unit feet. Okay, so yun lang class. Just use the Pythagorean theorem. Then let's try another example. Here, this is the rate problem to say a class. More on velocity than displacement ng vehicle. But again, don't worry, let's illustrate. So we have here two vehicles A and B departed from a common starting point. So we illustrate. So here, let's try na dito sa nag-start. Ito yung starting point. And then, vehicle A travels north at a constant speed of 60 miles per hour. So, meron pala tong direction. So, we have here north, south, east, west. So, travels north at 60 miles per hour. So, this is 60 miles per hour. And then, this is vehicle A. Then, vehicle B moves at uniform velocity westward. So, saan yung west natin? So, patungo dun. So, dun, westward. And then, after 2 hours, so, at t equals 2 hours, vehicle B covers a distance of 20 kilometers. So, yung na-cover pa nila ni B from starting point is 20 kilometers na. So, therefore, find the relative velocity of the two vehicles. So, required is the velocity relative ni A tsaka ni B. So, how are we going to solve this one, class? Actually, medyo nakalito, but let's analyze. So, if we draw this, since the velocity is a vector quantity, so let's say this is our A. So, this length of this vector class is 60 miles per hour. This 60 miles per hour. And then, yung vector velocity natin na B, hindi pa natin alam. Bakit? Kasi yung vehicle B, hindi sinasabi yung speed niya. But, we know the displacement here. Kasi diba, displacement natin dito is 20 kilometers. Diba, nakapag-cover na siya ng 20 kilometers in just 2 hours. So, dito, malalaman natin yung velocity ng B. What is the velocity of B? That is just the distance. Velocity ng B is just the distance na 20 all over time na 2 hours. So, magkano pala? That is 10 kilometers per hour. But since miles per hour tayo dito, kasi diba yung isa dito is 60 miles per hour. Therefore, i-convert muna natin ng miles. So, we know that 1.602 kilometers is 1 mile. So, therefore, divide lang pala natin tong 10 kilometers divide by 1.602. So, we have 10 divided by 1.602. The answer is 6.24 approximately. So, approximately 6.24 miles per hour. So, therefore, consistent na sila. So, the magnitude of this vector B is 6.24 miles per hour. So, meron na tayong length dito sa vehicle A, then meron tayong length sa vehicle B. So, therefore, class, itong nagko-connect na vector from A to B, ito yung tinatawag natin na relative velocity nila. So, that is the relative velocity. So, yan yung hinahanap natin. So, ano yung measurement natin dito? Of course, we know that this is a right triangle, class. Kasi pa north si A, pa westward si B. Therefore, this is a perfect triangle and we can let the relative velocity as our C. So, this is our C, this is our A, and this is our B. So, therefore, solution, using Pythagorean theorem, so, Pythagorean pa rin, Pythagorean theorem. So, our C here is the relative velocity. So, ito yung required natin. So, I can just write as the V relative squared is equals to yung velocity ng A. So, velocity ng A squared plus the velocity ng B squared. So, since hinahanap si V relative squared, so, yung velocity ng A is 60 miles per hour. So, that is 60 squared plus 6.24 squared. Then, simplify. So, we have here 60 squared plus 6.24 squared. The answer is 3,638. So, we have here 3638.9376. Then, taking the square both sides, para yung makuha natin is yung relative velocity nila. So, we now have v relative is equals to the square root of 3638. So we now have 60.32. This is just an approximate value, miles per hour. So be consistent with the units class, and don't forget this principle na nag-travel siya pa north, travel pa westward, then itong 20 kilometers hindi mo pa to pwede na i-combine sa 60 miles per hour kasi naka distance pa lang ito. And don't forget, since meron tayong ditong time na 2 hours, so therefore we can easily get the velocity kasi velocity is just the distance divided by time. So I have here 6.24 miles per hour. So I can use this to get the value of the velocity. So ito na yung velocity representation ng ating vehicle B. So since may velocity na sa A, may velocity na sa B, so therefore makukuha natin yung relative velocity nila. So remember, yung relative velocity nila is just the distance from B to A in this representation or yung vector nila. So therefore this would be our hypotenuse. So this serves as our hypotenuse, and then by using Pythagorean theorem, so you can just easily get the relative velocity. So thank you class for listening, and that would be all for our lesson 2 for module 4.